Hello, and welcome to my second video, which is going to be a review of Stargirl, the debut premiere episode. And I'm just realizing I'm never going to wear this shirt again because I match with the wall. And I don't like the fact that I can see the door there either. I got to work on this background thing. But that's not why you're here. You're here to listen to me talk about Stargirl. Is it worth everything? Did it live up to the hype? Absolutely yes. It's made for the DC streaming service, although it is also airing as part of the CW. Debuted last night on the streaming service, tonight on CW. And the CW shows, I find them really reliable. I like the format that they created for um, telling the superhero story, spending a year on a major villain, um, the commitment to diversity that you find in the cast. But I do have to say that the shows that have been made for the DC streaming service, Titans, Doom Patrol, and Swamp Thing, were all really exceptional. Definitely a layer above the CW shows, and I'm really happy to say that Stargirl fits in that as well. Even though it does feel a bit Disney, but in a good way. That's I kind of inevitable since it is a story about a teenager. So you've got her high school problems. Her mother has remarried. She's got a stepbrother. Uh, Her relationship with her stepfather isn't very good. So, there's a lot of those kind of elements that you would find in a Disney story. But there's also a very strong superhero element. In fact, the first 10 minutes or so of the episode are devoted to the destruction of the Justice Society of America 10 years earlier. We see them brutally taken down by members of the Injustice Society, culminating in the death of Starman. One of the things that this series does that I liked, it just makes it tidier, is that this Starman who dies, Sylvester Pemberton, was originally the Star Spangled Kid, so Stripesy was his sidekick, but when he became an adult, he became Starman. It's not quite that way in the comics. Starman was a different person, Ted Knight, who had a couple of sons who took over his identity, and one of them reworked his cosmic rod, creating the rod that you see used in the show. Easily the best design of it. Well, the Star Spangled Kid actually adopted a different identity, Skyman, before he died. None of that is relevant. The important thing is that the rod gets passed to the sidekick, Stripesy, who keeps it for many, many years. He would have been happy to take over the Starman identity himself, but in a delightful and kind of heart-wrenching rejection, Starman tells Stripesy that no, he's not meant to carry on the torch or the rod. So the story then jumps 10 years, and we get into this family dynamic as they have to move out to Blue Valley. Courtney, who is played superbly by Brie Bassinger, um, has a warm relationship with her mother, played by Amy Smart, although she idealizes the father that she never knew, who disappeared 10 years earlier, coincidentally, the same night that the Justice Society were killed. The mother has married um, Stripesy, whose real name is Pat Dugan, and he's played by Luke Wilson, who does an excellent job. Um, but more than anyone, I really have to credit the boy playing Mike Dugan, who is Pat's son from a previous marriage. His name is Trey Romano. He's got a very small role, but this kid is amazing. He just burns up the screen every time he appears. Uh, Mike Dugan is a really minor character in the comics. He was introduced in Infinity Inc. and appeared in Stars and Stripe, which was the comic that introduced Courtney Whitmore, Stargirl. And I believe he also appeared in some late issues of JSA. But he's never done an awful lot. Trey Romano, he deserves to get a good role. Geoff Johns, incidentally, is the one who created the character of Courtney Whitmore. He wrote the comic Stars and Stripe. He's been behind a lot of the DC adaptations, and he's also the one behind this series. So you do get a really faithful adaptation of his story and the setup that appears in Stars and Stripe. Courtney finds the rod, and it forms a bond with her. One of the things that I quite enjoyed was the degree to which the rod has its own personality. Is it that Courtney chose the rod, or did the rod choose her? It definitely has its own agenda in the story. Speaking of which, the overall agenda is not merely this family dynamic. It is to introduce a new Justice Society of America. That has been apparent in the ads for this series, and this first episode is littered with Easter eggs that let comic readers know what's coming up. You can spot some familiar names of people who aren't heroes yet, but certainly will become. What's more interesting, I found, was the prevalence of villains in this city. There's also a map. There's clearly something very important about Blue Valley, which I'm sure we will learn as the series goes on. But it certainly seems that there are far too many supervillains in this town, living, at least at the moment, as normal people. That's not even the limit of the Easter eggs, though. The series is rife with them. The moving van that they take, Action Movers, the lettering of Action is the classic lettering of Action Comics, the book that introduced Superman. There's a movie theater in the town, which is showing a movie called The Liberty Files, which was a miniseries that featured the Justice Society of America. They took salt and pepper and they just tossed in as much delightful little references as they possibly could, which I really appreciate because most of the audience, an audience that doesn't know the Justice Society, that isn't familiar with DC Comics, they're not going to catch these things, but they're also not going to feel left out. They're not going to notice that they missed something. The people who catch them, I mean, you just sit there. If you're a fanboy like me, I got no interest in pretending to be anything other than what I am, and I just like squealed with delight over and over and over in this episode. Uh, Absolutely, I give this 10 out of 10. I have very high expectations for where it's going. Fantastic performances, really good effects. There's really nothing that I can possibly criticize it for. Stargirl, watch it.